Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, one of the really powerful ideas in Eastern philosophy and how it connects to, life today. We're talking about courage. And our main source is a collection of Swami Vivekananda's teachings. It's called Fear Not, Be Strong, pretty direct title. So, our mission here is really to get you a shortcut to understanding Vivekananda's core idea for living, well, a successful life. We're going to try and pull out the essential wisdom on how you can actually transform weakness and not just like physical weakness, but moral, mental weakness and spiritual weakness too into real strength. It's an analysis of action, self-realization, and yeah, power. And we really want to understand this bold claim Vivekananda makes that fear isn't just, an unpleasant feeling or a small problem. No, he says it's the single biggest obstacle to everything. Doesn't matter if it's peace of mind, career success, or spiritual growth. Fear, he says, is the enemy.
Absolutely. And that intense focus, I think, is why this material still feels so relevant, especially for the learner, someone looking for a clear structure.
Hmm.
So the big question we need to wrestle with today is this. How does this idea, this pretty radical idea of realizing your inner divinity, that God is within you, how does that actually become practical courage? How does it translate into real success in, let's face it, the messy, often stressful world we live in? It sounds huge, maybe a bit abstract.
Right.
But what we find is the teachings are built on intensely practical ways to apply it to yourself. It's not just theory.
Okay, so let's start right there with the main idea, which, like you said, the source hits with real force. This collection, Fear Not, Be Strong, it's all about building courage, building confidence, inner strength. But first, you've got to face the enemy, right? Understand what you're up against.
Hmm.
And Vivekananda is just crystal clear. Fear is the ultimate weakness. He doesn't see it as a symptom. No. He sees it as the fundamental problem, the thing you absolutely have to target and neutralize first. Because, he argues, if fear has you paralyzed, nothing else matters. Talent, virtue, none of it can break through.
Exactly.
It's the root cause, he says, of all the weakness and, the inertia that follows.
And it's so important to get the philosophical weight he puts on that. This isn't just your standard chin up, be brave
Yeah.
kind of advice.
No.
He's identifying fear as like the basic flaw in how we often operate, the fundamental philosophical error. So if fear is the root cause, then courage isn't just a nice personality trait to have.
Right.
It's the essential key. It's the action you need to take to unlock everything else, your potential, freedom. Which then, of course, leads you to ask, okay, if we're supposed to be strong and free, where does all this weakness, this fear actually come from? Why do we feel it?
Yeah.
Especially, in situations that aren't literally life or death. Fear of what people think, fear of the market dropping, fear of making a big change.
Yeah, where does it come from? And the material gives this really deep philosophical answer. It turns the spotlight right back on us. It says pretty directly that fear comes from ignorance of our true nature. So the problem isn't really out there, it's in here. It's how we see ourselves, or rather, how we fail to see ourselves correctly.
Precisely. That's the absolute pivot point for everything else he teaches. He grounds the whole argument in understanding the self. With a capital S, he lays it out. Our true core identity is the Atman, the soul,
Okay.
and the fundamental nature, the essence of the soul. It's inherently fearless, it's eternal, it's complete, whole. This is where it starts to get really profound.
Eternal and fearless.
Think about it. If you are truly eternal, what is there fundamentally to be afraid of losing?
Hmm.
Okay, you can lose money, status, your reputation, but those are all temporary things, right?
Yeah.
Material stuff. They can't actually touch that core essence, your real self.
So if we are eternal and fearless by our very nature,
Then the experience of fear must be based on, well, an illusion, a mistake, a profound misunderstanding of who we actually are.
wow. So it's not just a bad mood, it's like a deep existential mistake we're making.
Yes.
Vivekananda is saying we feel weak because we've basically forgotten who we are. We think we're this limited, temporary body and mind.
Right, there you go.
When actually we're this limitless, divine, eternal thing. It's like trying to run your life on a tiny disposable battery when you've got this infinite power source sitting right inside you unused.
That's a perfect analogy. We're operating from the wrong power source.
It's like spiritual self-sabotage on a massive scale.
Exactly. And the implication is just huge. Fear isn't something the world does to us. It's a limitation we impose on ourselves. It happens when we identify with the temporary stuff, this body that gets sick and dies, this ego that needs approval, instead of identifying with the eternal soul.
Mm-hmm.
We fear death because we think we are the body. We fear failure because we think we are our list of achievements or what others think of us. But the soul,
Mm.
untouched by all that.
Yeah. Okay, here's where, I need to push a bit.
Yeah.
Because this is where it gets really interesting, but maybe also challenging for someone listening today. Vivekananda seems to suggest the result of realizing this is immediate, like flipping a switch.
Hmm.
He says, when we manage to see past that ignorance, when we realize our divine nature, all fear just disappears. Poof!
Yes, that's the claim.
Now, that idea of immediate and total transformation fear, just gone entirely, that sounds almost too good to be true. Maybe a bit utopian. I mean, what about ingrained habits, anxiety, real trauma people have experienced? Is he really saying just knowing this is enough? Or are there steps, practices involved?
That's a really important question, a necessary one. Vivekananda is radical in his assertion, for sure.
Hmm.
But he does understand the gap between getting it intellectually and living it consistently. When he says fear disappears instantly, he's primarily talking about that deep foundational fear, that existential dread that maybe we're incomplete, temporary, fundamentally flawed. That philosophical error, he argues, is corrected the moment you have that true realization.
Ugh.
The ground shifts beneath your feet, metaphysically speaking.
Ah, I see. So the root fear goes.
The root fear goes.
Yeah.
But yes, the ingrained habits, the nervous system's reactions, the psychological triggers built up over years, those definitely take practice to unwind. Remember, his teachings come from yoga. Yoga means union. The instant realization is like the theoretical union achieved.
Right.
But then comes the practice, things like karma yoga, which is selfless action, and raja yoga, mental discipline, meditation, to actually maintain that awareness,
Okay.
to stop the old temporary ego-based patterns from hijacking your consciousness again. So realization gives you the power source.
Wow.
Practice is the discipline needed to keep it flowing, to channel it properly.
Okay, that distinction makes a huge difference. It makes it feel much more achievable somehow.
Yeah.
So the transformation isn't necessarily about like slowly battling external trauma from the outside in. It's more like an internal switch gets flipped. The recognition happens, but then you need ongoing effort, discipline to make that the new default setting.
Exactly. The individual instantly becomes strong, free, self-reliant in potential because they've realized they were never fundamentally weak.
They just thought they were weak.
Precisely. Strength wasn't something they gained, it was something they uncovered, something that was always there.
Wow.
And that internal realization is what creates the self-reliance people are looking for externally. You stop needing external validation, temporary fixes, or other people's approval quite so desperately.
Because the source is inside.
Because you realize the source of real power, real security, is already inside you, and it's limitless. You're just learning to tap into it and express what's inherently yours.
Okay, to really grasp this idea of inherent strength, this almost instantaneous shift, we need to understand the engine behind it, right? The philosophy. And the source material, Fear Not, Be Strong, makes it super clear that Vivekananda's whole argument is anchored in, well, it draws heavily from Vedantic philosophy.
Yes, and it's worth spending a moment here digging into the specifics.
Yeah.
Because understanding this context really elevates the whole thing beyond just positive thinking.
Right.
Vedanta, which comes from the Upanishads, ancient Indian texts, is fundamentally non-dualistic. That's a key term. Non-dual, meaning it asserts there's no ultimate separation between the individual soul, the Atman, and the ultimate reality, the universal consciousness, often called Brahman.
So my soul and God, or the universe, are the same thing.
Essentially, yes, at the deepest level. It provides this ultimate cosmic assurance, the realization that God dwells within everyone. The divine isn't just out there, it's the very core of your being.
Okay, that's a huge idea.
It is. And for Vivekananda, this is the absolute non-negotiable connection between what might seem like very abstract spiritual thought and the really practical, down-to-earth goal of being courageous in your daily life. If the divine, infinite, eternal, fearless power isn't just floating around somewhere, but is actually residing right at the center of who you are, if Atman is Brahman, well, that changes everything.
Yeah, it changes how you'd approach, well, anything. Monday morning, like you said.
Exactly.
So when you feel that fear or that sense of being small or inadequate, you're doing more than just feeling bad.
You are. From this perspective, you're essentially committing an act of, well, deep philosophical self-contradiction. Self-sabotage, as you put it earlier.
How so?
Because you're implicitly saying that the temporary stuff outside the challenging boss, the market volatility, the fear of what someone might say, is somehow more real or more powerful than the eternal divine force that constitutes your actual self.
You're denying your own nature.
Precisely. If you accept this core Vedantic idea, that divine, eternal, fearless power is right here inside you, then a very powerful, very uncompromising consequence follows logically. To fear anything, absolutely anything external, is fundamentally to deny your own divinity.
Wow.
And that's why Vivekananda saw fear not just as, inconvenient or bad for your career,
Right.
but as a kind of moral failing,
Mm.
a rejection of the highest spiritual truth about yourself and about reality.
That completely reframes the idea of self-respect, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just about having a healthy ego or liking yourself. It's about honoring the philosophical truth of what you are.
Yes. Philosophical self-respect. If you truly acknowledge your divine nature, then feeling fundamentally weak or victimized becomes, well, philosophically inconsistent, impossible almost.
So Vivekananda is kind of giving us this high-stakes internal check every time we feel overwhelmed. Okay, hold on. Am I reacting from the perspective of the eternal Atman right now? Or am I caught up in the story of the temporary fragile ego?
That's a great way to put it. It's a constant invitation to shift your perspective back to the source.
Okay, so this framework lets us boil it down, right? Distill the core message, the equation for true strength.
Mm.
If someone asks, what really makes a person strong, truly resilient? The answer from Vivekananda, based on Vedanta, is
Realizing your inner divinity, that realization isn't the result of becoming strong, it's the source of strength itself.
and that answers the big why for the listener, doesn't it? Why is self-confidence so important?
Exactly.
Because true self-confidence, in this Vivekananda sense, isn't arrogance. It's not puffing yourself up. It's the quiet, steady, deep down knowing, the intellectual acknowledgement of that eternal, fearless soul within. It's confidence based on a perceived metaphysical fact, not just wishful thinking or how you feel today.
Confidence rooted in reality, as the Vedanta defines it, not rooted in fluctuating external praise or temporary success.
But okay, expert, let's get practical again. We can grasp the philosophy, maybe even feel inspired by it. But how does someone actually do this? How does the person waiting anxiously for that job offer, or dealing with chronic stress, or just feeling overwhelmed by life? How do they actually cultivate this deep, unshakable self-belief, especially when everything outside seems to be screaming doubt at them?
Yeah, the how-to. Vivekananda was intensely focused on this, on implementation, especially when he was speaking to the youth of India. He really wanted them to shake off any sense of fatalism or passive victimhood.
Okay.
And he urged people to actively cultivate two specific things.
Yeah.
Very actionable. First, faith in themselves. And second, robust self-confidence.
Faith in themselves, but based on what we just discussed, that means faith in the Atman, right? Not just faith in their current skills or personality.
Exactly. It's crucial. He wasn't asking for blind faith, like just believe you're great.
Yeah.
He was saying, have faith in the divine potential, the Atman, the infinite capacity that Vedanta says is demonstrably present within you, whether you feel it right now or not.
Got it.
And this kind of self-belief, rooted in your divine nature, he explicitly calls essential for success. He had that famous quote, something like, the history of the world is the history of a few men who had faith in themselves.
Believing in that inner core.
Believing in that inner core. And that's the critical link we need to make. Spiritual awareness for Vivekananda isn't about retreating from the world into some blissful bubble.
No.
It's the ultimate preparation for engaging with the world, for conquering the world of action, you could say.
So you realize the divinity first.
You realize the divinity first, you tap into that inner power source so that you can then apply that limitless energy and resilience to whatever you're doing in the world, business, art, service, family, anything.
That connects the dots perfectly. It's not just vague positive thinking. It's not wishful thinking.
Yeah.
It's the practical application of recognizing what you believe to be an eternal truth about yourself. The power is already there. You just need to turn it on, recognize it, and use it.
Exactly. And it changes how you view failure, too. If you operate from this perspective, failure isn't a catastrophe that defines you. It's just a temporary misapplication of your energy, maybe. A learning experience. You adjust your approach, but the core self, the Atman, remains untouched, undefeated, still full of potential.
Okay, so we've talked about the source of fear being ignorance and the remedy being this realization of inner divinity rooted in Vedanta. Now let's move into how this fearlessness actually shows up, how it looks when it's put to work in the world.
Right. Action.
And the first thing the source material does is push back against a common idea that strength is mainly or only physical.
A very limited view.
Vivekananda insists that real strength has to be holistic. It needs to be balanced. It must include moral strength, mental strength, and underlying it all, spiritual strength.
A three-legged stool, essentially.
Why? Yeah, exactly. It's a complete package. Think about it. Someone could be physically very strong, capable of amazing feats. But if they're morally weak, if they lie, cheat, betray trust to get ahead, Vivekananda would say that person isn't truly strong, they're actually weak.
How so?
Because they're enslaved by fear. Fear of poverty, maybe. Fear of not being seen as successful or important. Fear of losing face. That fear is driving their unethical actions. So they're not free, they're still trapped.
That's a powerful way to frame it.
Yeah.
So moral strength, in this context, means what? Absolute integrity.
Yeah.
Adherence to truth, to your principles, even when it's difficult, even when it costs you something, even when it's unpopular.
Exactly. It's the strength to say no to the easy but wrong path. The strength to resist corruption or compromise when your inner voice says it's wrong.
Okay. And then mental strength.
Mental strength is about clarity, focus, calm amidst the storm.
Right.
It's the ability to handle pressure, complexity, maybe chaos in the market, or a personal crisis without completely losing it, without your thinking dissolving into panic or reactivity.
Right. So concentration, objectivity.
Yes. And that power of concentration, he'd argue, comes directly from knowing that the external noise, the chaos, can't ultimately harm your true self, the Atman. You can stay centered.
You're finally spiritual strength. That's the bedrock.
That's the bedrock. That's the fundamental realization we've been talking about, the unshakable foundation. Knowing you're rooted in something eternal, something that can't ultimately be defeated or destroyed.
And these three moral, mental, spiritual position, they have to work together.
Absolutely. He implies the structure collapses if one leg is missing or what. If you have spiritual insights but you're morally corrupt, that power gets misused, twisted. It won't lead to true strength or liberation. It'll likely lead to more suffering for you and others.
Okay, so if someone cultivates this holistic strength, this fearlessness rooted in divinity, how does that actually change their behavior? How does it manifest in daily life and their decisions?
Well, the first big marker, according to Vivekananda, the defining action, is the willingness to take complete responsibility for your life, for your actions and their consequences.
No more blaming.
No more blaming. If you accept that you are inherently divine, inherently free and powerful at your core, then you have to accept that you are the primary creator of your own experience, your own destiny, you could say.
So you can't point fingers at circumstances, bad luck, other people, the government, whatever. Not ultimately.
Not ultimately. The weak person, the fearful person, looks for external causes to blame for their problems. The fearless person, because they recognize the power within the Atman, knows that their reality, their situation, is largely a result of their own past actions, thoughts, and choices. Karma, essentially.
And that mindset, that acceptance of responsibility, it transforms challenges, doesn't it?
Completely. They stop being external punishments or unfair obstacles.
And they become problems to be solved. Situations to be navigated using that inner strength and wisdom.
Exactly. It demands you face the world actively, assertively, and with this deep underlying optimism, not a naive optimism, but the optimism that comes from knowing you have the inner resources to handle whatever comes.
That really is a profound act of courage, isn't it? To claim full authorship of your life story, the good chapters and the bad.
Yeah. It means the default mindset isn't passive endurance, just gritting your teeth through hardship. It's proactive engagement.
Right. We must, as the teachings say, face life's challenges with courage and optimism. It's a constant call to action.
Yeah.
Vivekananda is constantly pushing readers to rise above the fear, the weakness, the doubt that holds them back. It's not about detaching passively from the world. It's about transforming your internal state so profoundly that you can engage with the world dynamically, powerfully, effectively.
You're not waiting for the world to change or for things to get easier.
No. You're actively changing yourself, knowing that your internal state of fearlessness and strength is the most powerful tool you have to influence your external reality. And knowing that ultimately nothing external can truly define or defeat that core self.
Okay, now we get to what feels like the culmination, the final and maybe the most revolutionary part of this. All this work, realizing divinity, cultivating fearlessness, building moral and mental strength, it's emphatically not just for your own personal benefit, not just about getting rich or famous or feeling good about yourself.
Right, there's a bigger purpose.
There's a bigger purpose. The ultimate aim is outward-looking. It's focused on service. Vivekananda repeatedly calls on people, once they've found this strength, to serve humanity, act bravely, and live a life dedicated to a higher purpose. Your fearlessness isn't just for you, it's a resource to be used for the good of others, to help alleviate their suffering, their
That's
weakness.
the highest expression of karma yoga, right? Selfless action. And this is where the whole philosophical structure of Vedanta becomes almost a global mandate for action.
How so?
Well, if you realize your divinity and become fearless, Vedanta implies you now have a kind of obligation to help others realize theirs.
Why an obligation?
Because, from that non-dual perspective, the soul, the Atman, in the person suffering next to you is fundamentally the same Atman that's within you. There's only one ultimate self, expressing itself through many forms.
Ah, so serving humanity is serving yourself in a way, serving the universal self.
Precisely. It's serving the universal expression of your own deepest nature. It breaks down the illusion of separation between me and them.
And that creates this amazing feedback loop, doesn't it? This virtuous cycle.
It really does. It connects bravery and growth directly, the very act of serving others, of facing difficulties fearlessly on behalf of a cause bigger than yourself. That action itself deepens your own spiritual growth. It reinforces your own fearlessness.
How does that work?
Because by stepping outside your own small circle of personal fears, fear of loss, fear of inconvenience, fear of what might happen to me, and directing your energy toward helping others or upholding a principle, you are, by definition, acting from a less ego-driven place.
Okay.
You're transcending the small self. And that act, ironically, strengthens your connection to the larger, fearless self even more.
Okay, let's try and make that concrete. A modern example, maybe. A business leader.
Sure.
Imagine a CEO who has genuinely tapped into this idea of inner divinity, this fearlessness. They're not just fearless in, say, taking calculated market risks.
Right.
They're also morally fearless. So during an economic downturn, they don't immediately resort to mass layoffs driven purely by fear for next quarter's profits, fear of shareholder reaction.
Right, they resist that fear-based reaction.
Yes. Their moral strength, born from that inner fearlessness, might dictate that they have a responsibility to serve the whole system, their employees, the community, the long-term health of the company, not just the short-term bottom line demanded by fear.
That's a great example. That shift in focus from pure self-preservation or corporate ego preservation to a broader sense of service and responsibility. That's the practical test.
That's the test of true fearlessness in action.
Absolutely. And that's Vivekananda's point. I think if you're still too afraid to act generously, ethically, selflessly when it really counts, then you're still fundamentally defined by the limitations of your ego.
You haven't really broken free.
You haven't truly broken free. But if you act gravely, ethically, serve a larger good, even when it's hard or scary, your own spiritual and mental stature expands instantly because your temporary actions are aligning with your eternal nature.
So the whole point of realizing inner divinity
Is ultimately to manifest that divinity in the world through courageous, ethical, service-oriented action. And in doing so, you help eradicate not just your own weakness, but the weakness and suffering you see around you. It's a powerful, world-changing idea. So maybe we can just synthesize this whole process. For the listener who wants that clear takeaway structure from the source, how does this transformation actually work according to Vivekananda? It seems to flow logically from understanding the problem to applying the solution.
Yeah, let's map it out.
Okay, first, you have to start by recognizing the fundamental mistake. Understanding that fear is weakness. It's the #1 obstacle blocking everything else. You have to see it clearly.
Step 1, identify the enemy. Fear equals weakness.
Right. Step 2, seek the real source of strength. And that comes from realizing that the weakness you feel is an illusion. It's caused by ignorance of your true nature, your inner divinity. You are the Atman eternal, whole, already complete.
Step 2, realize inner divinity.
Right.
Recognize you are the Atman.
Exactly. Step 3, apply this realization. Put that power into practice. How? Through cultivating radical self-confidence, not arrogance, but confidence based on that divine nature. And crucially, combine that with taking complete responsibility for your actions and choices in the world.
Step 3, apply it through self-confidence and total responsibility.
And finally, step 4, understand the outcome. This ongoing spiritual awareness, this practice, is what transforms that initial state of weakness and fear into lasting power, genuine peace, and ultimately a life of purposeful service to others.
Step 4, transformation into power, peace, and service.
That seems to capture the flow of it. Recognition, realization, application, transformation.
Okay, so what does this all mean? At the end of the day, I think this deep dive really shows that for Vivekananda, conquering fear isn't just about psyching yourself up or using willpower. It's much deeper. It's fundamentally about fixing a major philosophical error in how we see ourselves. It's about correcting our ignorance of our true divine nature.
Right, the root cause.
And once that error is corrected, once you truly know deep down that you are eternal, fearless, divine, then, he argues, success, service, inner peace, they start to follow almost naturally, inevitably, maybe.
Because the real power source has finally been switched on.
Yeah, the internal power source. It's a really potent idea, isn't it? The biggest battle you'll ever fight isn't against the world. It's against the illusion of your own limitation, your own weakness. Every time you hesitate because of fear, every time you doubt yourself fundamentally, it's like you're casting a vote against your true self, against that divinity within.
Which leads us perfectly into a final thought, something provocative for you, the listener, to maybe mull over this week, based directly on these teachings. If it's true, as Vivekananda asserts, that every single human being contains this infinite divine power and potential, this Atman,
Yeah.
then what is the biggest practical risk we are actually taking every single day when we let those small worldly fears dominate our choices? The fear of what someone might think, fear of embarrassment, fear of losing some temporary status or money. When we let those fears dictate our actions, what are we truly risking? What potential are we denying ourselves? And perhaps more importantly, what potential benefit, what service, what positive impact are we denying the world when we deny the reality of our own divinity?
Wow.
That perhaps is the real hidden cost of living in fear. It's not just what it does to us, it's what it prevents us from being and doing for ourselves and for everyone else.